Before I start, a brief reminder. Once again, the charity Ghost Walk is going ahead on the 30th of November at 8 p.m. Tickets are still available on our Just Giving page. The link is in the description. It's £3 a ticket, and all proceeds go to the Llandaff Cancer Centre, a worthy charity, you'll agree. I've done a little bit more advertising this time. There are posters up. I've got people to share it on Facebook and Twitter. And it should be a little bit more professional than last time, since myself and my ridiculous mustache have been practicing in the mirror. I hope to see some of you there, but now, let's take a little look at vampires. Vampires. We all love vampires, and when mentioned in conversation, we automatically reminisce on characters for our favourite films. Films such as The Lost Boys, or From Dusk Till Dawn, Let the Right One In, or, my personal favourite, Salem's Lot. Or this eye-burning, soul-destroying monstrosity. This channel's going to the dogs, I swear to God. But past the films and the fruity cupcakes on TikTok who post videos of themselves pretending to be vampires, most people tend to agree that the most famous representation of a vampire is that of Bram Stoker's Dracula. But back several hundred years ago, all over Europe, the fear that recently deceased would rise from the dead was a real concern. Great lengths were taken to ensure that the unquiet dead would not be able to drag themselves from their eternal resting places and prey on the living. Graves dating from the 16th century up until the mid-1800s, and across Europe from Britain to Italy and up to Poland, have shown the great steps people went through to keep them and their loved ones safe from those suspected of suffering from vampirism. Heads removed post-mortem and placed between their legs, to large stones inserted into the mouths of corpses to stop them from biting after death, and in some cases, even hammering metal rings around the necks of the body to hold them in their coffins. And then we come to Wales. Wales is fairly unique when it comes to vampires, since ours come in a variety of shapes and sizes. And I do mean it when I say all shapes and sizes. I was quite taken aback when I heard about it. Now I will say that the stories that I've heard came from a podcast that my girlfriend and I recently stumbled across, called Dark Wales Tours Podcast. I'm still in disbelief that I have only just heard about it, since they cover many of the same locations that I've featured on this channel. If you're a fan of the content that I spew out, I'd recommend giving them a look. I'll pop a link in the description. Now I won't talk too much on Wales' vampires, since Dark Wales Tours does a remarkable job of telling the stories, but it would appear that the vampire attacks to come out of Wales are mainly associated with furniture. That's right, furniture. Chairs and beds were often accused of being inherently evil and physically harming people by biting them and draining their blood from them. Many items of furniture were destroyed or locked away for safety purposes. Sounds a bit bizarre to me, but it leads me on to my next story. A much darker story, which is sadly true and much more recent than any of the past burials. Now I'll start this story by saying that I do cover a lot of the crime, and it is quite graphic. I will not show any photos other than certain things that are found at the scene, but viewer discretion is advised. Our story begins in Anglesey, North Wales on November the 24th, 2001, exactly 22 years ago today. 90-year-old Mabel Lation sat in her favourite armchair watching TV, an activity that most of us do most nights without any issue. Tragically, this would be the last time that Mabel would enjoy this activity, since, unbeknownst to her, a predator had been stalking the area and had chosen her to play out his sick fantasy. The following day, on November 25th, a volunteer arrived to deliver Sunday lunch to Mabel. When she received no response, she wandered around the outside of the property, only to find a broken window at the rear of the house. The volunteer immediately called 999. Shortly after, the police arrived and entered the residence, only to be met with a scene straight out of a horror film. Mabel was laying on the floor in her living room in a pool of blood. It was established that she'd been attacked from behind by the assailant while she sat in her favourite armchair. As she lay on the floor fighting for her life, her attacker began his frenzied attack. Mabel was stabbed a total of 22 times. She had 2 large gashes in her thighs and a large wound in her chest, along with multiple other stab wounds. But if that wasn't horrific enough, the intruder had also used a saucepan from her kitchen to drain the blood from the wounds in her thighs. It became quite clear to the inspectors that whoever had committed this atrocity had drank poor Mabel's blood, since they could see bloody lip prints on the side of the pot. They then noticed that amongst the gore, something rattled around in the pan. It turned out that the killer had removed poor Mabel's heart through the hole in her chest. It was apparent to all those involved that whoever the killer was, he wanted to shock the authorities. He'd placed 2 pokers in the shape of a crucifix at Mabel's feet and a candlestick near her body. As you'd imagine, anger ripped through the community as police vowed to hunt down the killer. Days turned into weeks, and on the first 2 weeks of January 2002, a local teen was arrested in connection with the murder. Matthew Hardman, a 17-year-old local teen, was arrested after shoe prints found at the scene alerted officers to him during a house search. Upon inspection, a bloody knife was found within his house that showed traces of DNA belonging to Mabel. It became quickly apparent that this teen was anything but normal. His bedroom was full of vampire and occult paraphernalia. Witnesses began to come forward, clarifying his dark obsession and behaviour. A 16-year-old German exchange student testified that Matthew believed that she was a vampire and begged her to bite him on the neck in order for him to obtain immortality. Believing him to be joking, she brushed off the request. Matthew, however, was not joking. He pinned her down and tried to force her to bite him. After a struggle, she managed to get away from him, but this only made him more determined to find more extreme methods of achieving his twisted goal. Matthew was found guilty of Mabel's murder and was given life in prison in 2002. He appealed his conviction in 2003, but it was rejected. He also applied for parole in 2014, but that was also denied. Matthew has always denied the charges. Although I began this video in my usual moronic manner, the case of Mabel Lation is an utterly tragic one. Although I don't believe in vampires, I believe in evil. What happened to that poor woman was nothing short of evil, and my thoughts and prayers go out to her family at what must be an absolutely horrendous time of year. She deserves to be remembered, but her killer deserves nothing less than to rot in the hole in which he was thrown and forgotten. I appreciate that this was a much darker story with a tragic end, and to make up for it, I will be releasing a much more light-hearted video next. Well, that's all from us here at Dark Entertainment. We hope that you've enjoyed the episode. If you have, drop us a comment on the video, like and subscribe. If you wish to get in contact, we are on X and Facebook. Or if you have a story or location you would like us to look into, drop me an email at dark_entertainment@outlook.com. And remember, stay dark, stay creepy, and always laugh. Ta-ta!